It was an oasis of safety, a paradise bought with absolute agony. His own physical torment was nothing compared to the sudden, cold dread of losing the child. His body, battered and broken, was already betraying him precisely when he needed it most. This sanctuary felt wrong. The air was still thick, heavy with the stench of sulfur and death. This was no paradise. It was a graveyard, a fresh tomb just dug for giants. Even the survivors here were marked by the falling ash, slowly, agonizingly dying on their feet. He realized, with crushing certainty, that no help was coming. This burden was his alone. Desperate, he fumbled, searching for the source of the kid's affliction, praying it wasn't too late. A memory sparked. The cub knew medicine. He just had to find the right leaves. Every single step was agony, leaving a trail of his own blood, driven only by the cub's fading life. The ground trembled beneath him. He dismissed it as a simple aftershock, completely unaware of the true danger lurking below. He reached for the life-saving leaves, only for them to disintegrate, turning to dust in his grasp. This oasis wasn't dying from the sky. It was being cooked from below. He turned back to the river, the very water he had just drunk, and a horrifying realization dawned. The water was no longer clear. It was boiling, choked with the dead rising lifeless to the surface. He scrambled back, clutching the cub, as the world began to truly shake apart. This was no mere aftershock. A panic erupted among the herbivores. The very ground they stood on was becoming a searing hot plate. With his arm useless, he scrambled on 3 limbs, desperate to find stable high ground anywhere. The valley floor tore open, splitting the world in two, violently venting superheated steam. One of the creatures, blind with panic, ran straight into the abyss. Its terrified scream was cut abruptly short. He saw it. Pain became irrelevant. He had to keep moving, or they would both share that fiery fate. He had escaped the fire, only to land directly in the furnace. The steam cleared, revealing an infernal, pulsing glow. Something was climbing up from the impossible depths. He narrowed his eyes, bracing his broken body. He knew what kind of creature was born from primal fire. The earth shattered as a colossal head, forged of cracked obsidian and molten rock, erupted upwards. The Magma Serpent revealed itself, its terrifying hiss like the grinding of tectonic plates. He was exhausted, broken. But the sight of a new challenger ignited a fresh wave of fury. A creature born not of flesh and blood, but forged from the Earth's very molten core. It turned its molten gaze upon the remaining survivors and unleashed a horrific torrent of liquid fire. The creature was encased instantly, its final scream perpetually frozen in a burning black tomb. The serpent locked eyes with Kong. It recognized the true alpha and the true threat. There is no rest for a king. There is only the next battle. The serpent met his charge not with lava, but with a suffocating, dense cloud of superheated ash. He knew this danger intimately. He dove aside, watching the rock face behind him melt instantly like wax. He countered, striking with his good hand, only to feel his knuckles crack uselessly against the creature's obsidian hide. Angered, the beast spun, its red-hot, mace-like tail whistling lethally through the air. His strength was failing him. His body was broken. He collapsed, his arm shattered and useless. The serpent loomed over him, opening its maw for the killing blow. With his one good arm, he scrambled back desperately, his fingers closing around a loose boulder. He raised the rock just in time, using it as a desperate shield against the stream of molten death. He hurled the melting slag back at its face, but the beast evaded and slammed its massive, superheated body into his ribs. The battle was no longer for dominance. It was purely for survival. He crumpled at the base of the cliff, broken and bleeding profusely. The darkness was closing in fast. The serpent savored its victory, moving in slowly to finish the fallen king. The sound of the battle had roused the cub, just in time to see his protector about to be executed. Terrified, Suko did the only thing he could. He threw a small, insignificant stone with all his might. The pebble bounced harmlessly off the monster's hide, but the distraction was made. He heard the cub's cry. The serpent had just made a fatal, unforgivable mistake. Pain is temporary, but the king's rage is eternal. The beast lunged, ignoring the broken arm, and began to constrict the king in its burning, massive coils. His fur sizzled against its hide. The heat was unbearable, the pressure crushing his very bones. The serpent brought its molten face close, ready to watch the life fade from his defiant eyes. But in its arrogance, it exposed its one weakness, a pulsing fissure of raw magma right over its core. He plunged his one good hand deep into the creature's molten heart. The pain was blinding, absolute. For the first time, the magma beast shrieked in genuine agony, its coils spasming and loosening their grip. He ripped himself free, his own hand smoking and ruined, and seized the monster by its head. Fueled by pure, primal adrenaline, he slammed the serpent's head into the valley floor, again and again, shattering the obsidian armor piece by agonizing piece. The beast, though stunned, managed one last desperate tail whip, catching his leg and breaking his stance. It knew it was beaten physically. It retreated, burrowing back into the earth it came from. He gasped for air, knowing instantly this wasn't a retreat.
Ow, ow.
It was a change in tactics. He looked down. The ground beneath his feet was glowing an ominous red. It was directly below him. He leaped back just as the monster erupted from the ground in a violent spray of molten rock. The ground became a deadly game of cat and mouse, the serpent striking and vanishing, turning the valley into a lethal minefield. A king needs a weapon, but when the body fails, the mind must become the spear. Dodging another strike, he finally saw his weapon. Not a rock, but the boiling river itself. The serpent, blinded by its primal rage, didn't see the trap. It only saw the retreating king. He stood at the bank, roaring a final challenge, daring the creature to come and finish him. The beast took the bait, lunging forward and spitting its plume of pyroclastic death. Instead of dodging, he met the attack head-on, seizing the monster's lower jaw with his own burning, ruined hand. With the last ounce of his strength, he used the monster's own momentum to tackle it directly into the boiling river. Fire fears one thing, and it is not the fist. The thermal shock was instantaneous. The water, though hot, began to solidify the beast's magma core. Its obsidian shell, superheated, cracked, and shattered as the relative cold of the water shocked its system. Though scalded himself, Kong held its head under, refusing to let it surface, drowning it in steam. The light in its molten eyes flickered and then went dark. The beast was dead. He surfaced from the steam, breathing in ragged, desperate gasps. and let out a weak, agonizing roar of victory. He tried to swim to shore, but his hand was trapped, fused to the monster's rapidly cooling jaw. He ripped his hand free with a sickening crack, tearing one of the beast's massive obsidian teeth loose with it. He dragged himself onto the grass, took 2 agonizing steps toward the cub, and collapsed, face down. Victory, the heaviest burden a king must carry. He had done everything he could. He let the darkness finally, mercifully take him. Suko, weak but alive, saw his protector fall and began the slow, painful crawl down the hill. He reached the king's massive head, chirping weakly, trying to nudge him awake. There was no response. The small cub was suddenly struck by a new, terrible loneliness. He looked at the river, then at Kong. He dragged himself to the water's edge, cupping it in his tiny hands. The cool water on his face caused the king to stir, just a single sharp breath, but it was enough. He was alive. The burden of care had shifted. The student had become the guardian. The king was unconscious. The cub was poisoned, both of them stranded, exposed in a valley of death. In this shattered world, even the victor is just another meal in waiting.